What is beef stroganoff? Think beautifully cooked beef smothered in a creamy, delicious mushroom gravy sauce. And that is beef stroganoff. Let me show you how to make it. Alright, let's start off with the onions. All I'm doing here is thinly slicing up my onion. I'm using half a medium-sized yellow onion. Then I'm going to go ahead and mince up 3 cloves of garlic. The amount of garlic is really up to you. If you would like it more garlicky, add more. Less, add less. Now for the mushrooms, I particularly like using shiitake because it's quite meaty and it's perfect for this dish. I'm using about 10 and I'm just slicing it to about 1/3 of an inch thick. Maybe 1/4, but you know, not too thin is what I'm getting at. And then I took out the stems because the stems could be quite woody and tough. But don't throw away the stems because you can use it for stalks. If you don't have shiitake mushrooms, you can go ahead and use any other kind of mushrooms you have access to or whatever mushrooms you like. Now let's talk steak. I'm using here a prime hanger steak, and as you can see, I'm patting it dry, just like you would with any steak when you cook it. I'm using a hanger here because it's what I had on hand, and I quite like this cut because it's a very delicious cut to cook medium rare and it gets very tender. Use whatever cut you like or whatever you have access to. You don't have to use the same cut here. And what makes my recipe different from other recipes is I'm going to leave the steak whole actually and just cook it as a whole piece of steak and slicing it up because I think that the fond would develop better and the doneness would be a lot better as well. Of course, like cooking any steak, you're going to go ahead and season it with salt and pepper on both sides, of course. And make sure you season it on all sides, on every surface area of the steak. I'm going to heat up my cast iron on a medium to medium high heat with a little drizzle of oil. And I'm going to rub this into the cast iron to do 2 things. To season my cast iron and to use it as an indicator to tell me when the pan is ready to be used. Just like the wok in my fried rice video. And once the pan gets smoky just like this, it means it's ready to be used. So I'm going to drizzle in some oil and then I'm going to throw in my steak and make sure you hear the sizzle. If you don't hear the sizzle, take it back out and wait for the pan to be hot. And then get that steak on. Make sure you hear that sizzle. If you don't hear that sizzle, take it back out and wait for the pan to get hot. I'm just going to go ahead and cook this for about 3 minutes per side, and I'm going to flip it every minute. Alright, after I flipped it about twice, I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 tablespoons of butter, and I'm just going to let that melt in, and then all I'm going to do is baste my steak. This is going to give me some flavor, it's going to help me develop that crust better. And just give me more of that caramelized flavor. So the idea here is you want to keep basting each side for about a minute, flipping it back and forth until you get to a medium rare or your desired doneness. But in my case, medium rare and about 129, 130 degrees. So once it looks like this, let's take the beef out and start cooking the mushrooms. Now I leave the fat all in the pan and just dump my mushroom in because that mushroom will soak up all that flavor and it will make that mushroom so much better. Just trust me on this, okay? Leave it in. It's not going to be too greasy, I promise. Go ahead and just dump all that in and start cooking it. And then once it kind of gets soft like this, this is when you want to season it. So go ahead and season it, you know, like everything, with salt and with some pepper. And if the pan is a little too dry for you, feel free to add in some more oil or some form of fat. Somewhere you can add more butter, you can add more oil, it's up to you. But now I'm just gonna cook that until the onions start to get nice and soft, just barely soft, but it's gonna be translucent. And once the onions are barely cooked through just like this, I'm gonna go ahead and add in my garlic now. I didn't want to add in my garlic in the beginning with mushrooms because garlic will burn and they will burn very quickly. This is why I added in after I've cooked my mushroom and my onions. And once my garlic gets nice and fragrant, I'm gonna go ahead and deglaze my pan with some bourbon. You don't have to use bourbon, you can use any other liquid. Water, broth, white wine, it's up to you. I like the flavor of bourbon, so I'm gonna add bourbon. It gives a really nice flavor to this dish. So I'm gonna go ahead and cook it, and then remember halfway through cooking it that I can flambe it. So this is my weak attempt at flambeing this. Don't judge me, please. But once you've cooked off your alcohol, add in 2 tablespoons of butter. If you have about 2 tablespoons of fat in your pan, then you can go ahead and skip the step. But once your butter has melted through, I'm gonna go ahead and add in a heaping tablespoon of flour. And I'm just gonna go ahead and cook this through. Make sure there's no raw flour. Make sure the flour is cooked out because I don't want this flour taste in the sauce. And then once I have my flour nice and toasted, I'm gonna go ahead and add in some smoked paprika. It's gonna give me a nice, smoky, earthy flavor. Not too much of it, just about a teaspoon and a half. It would have been nice to add the smoked paprika before deglazing the pan, but I forgot, so this is when I added it. To build the sauce, I'm gonna first start with a 1/4 cup of broth, vegetable broth, and I'm just gonna dump that in and stir it in until the roux sucks up the broth and it gets nice and thick, just like this. And then I'm gonna go ahead and dump in another 1/4 cup, and then same process, just stir it in until it gets nice and thick again. Meanwhile, scraping up the bottom of the pan to get all that flavor off of it. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and repeat this process, adding a 1/4 cup at a time until I get to the consistency I like, which is a little bit thinner than gravy. And as you're pouring it in, just make sure you scrape up the bottom so that all the flavor on the bottom from the fawn, from the beef and the mushrooms can get incorporated into the sauce. And in the end, I used about 1.25 cups of my vegetable broth. So at this point, it's good for me, so I'm gonna go ahead and season it up with some more pepper. And then I'm also gonna season it with some Worcestershire sauce. I'm not adding too much, just about a teaspoon or so. This is for the nice savory umami background note. It's not something you'll taste when you eat this. So once it's added in, just stir everything through. Like always, taste for seasoning, adjust it to how you like it. If it's not salty enough, add more salt. If it's not peppery enough, add more pepper. Adjust it to your seasoning. And then one more thing I'm gonna add is some mushroom powder. Like in all of my videos, the mushroom powder is gonna give me ultimate umami-ness in any dish, especially this dish. Okay, so I'm gonna add it in. It's gonna give me an extra oomph of flavor. All right, so at this point, everything is cooked to the way I like it. And I'm just gonna take the beef juices from the resting steak and just dump it into this pan. I'm just gonna shut off the heat and let this cool down a little bit before I add my sour cream. While waiting for my sauce to cool down, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the steak. If you can see the grains here, it's kind of running up and down, but diagonally. And so what I'm gonna do is go ahead and cut it against the grain. And what this will do is it's gonna give me the most tender bite of beef I can get, especially for a steak like this where the fibers are kind of thick. And then I'm just gonna cut it down, not too thick. I'm going for about a 1/4 inch to an 1/8 inch. And then once I have all nice sliced up, let's get back to the sauce. So I'm just gonna add in 2 heaping teaspoons of sour cream. All right, maybe 2.5, okay? And again, my pan is off the heat now. There's no heat going into this pan, and I'm gonna stir it in, making sure it's stirred well. The reason why I turn off the pan and let it cool down before adding the sour cream, because the sour cream can and will split if you have your heat on. So once it's stirred through like this, and again, taste for seasoning, make sure it's to the way you like it. But once it is, go ahead and throw in your steak. And then the last thing to do now is to make sure to stir it through, make sure the steak is getting coated in the sauce. then once your stroganoff looks like this, it's time for the taste test. Now look at that beauty. Alright, let's give this a taste test. Alright, big piece of beef with a mushroom piece right there. Cheers. That's it. I'm out. I just need a moment, alright? Hold on. I mean, alright, you know what? One more bite, okay? One more bite. I mean, are you kidding me? Oh, it's so good. All right, let's talk about this, okay? The beef, perfect, medium rare, right? So nice and tender. The mushroom is just, it's so meaty, it's delicious. It's soaked up kind of all that beef juices, you know, after cooking the beef. It has so much flavor in it. And then that gravy just brings everything together. It's creamy, it's peppery from the all the pepper I put in it. It's slightly smoky, you know, from the smoked paprika. Whew, it's a perfect dish, okay? So make this, let me know how it goes in the comments below. And if you like this video, hit that like button. For more videos like this, hit the subscribe button, or this button right here. You can hit this one over here for my previous video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you, bye.